Mark, officially welcome to the Wealth Juice podcast. I'm excited to have you on the show. We do a lot of real estate investing talks here on our podcast, but business building is something we don't touch on too much. And you've built a huge business and sold it to Coca-Cola, and you're a visionary entrepreneur, investor, speaker. You're doing a lot of things here, but I'm excited to have you on the show. So I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks, Corey. I'm glad to be here. I've enjoyed getting about you and your show, and it brings me back. I'm from the other side of the state, Pittsburgh, but also just closed a deal with a team in Philly recently. So I've got kind of Philly on the mind.
All right. Yeah, man. I mean, I love chatting with people who have anything Philly related. I've been here my whole life. So for people that don't know you, Mark, give me a little background on who you are, like where you're from, how you grew up. I would like to dig into some of the early stages before the entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. Yeah, so born and raised in Pittsburgh, youngest of 6 kids, and my dad was a nuclear physicist, but I'm sure didn't make any more than the steel workers in our town, and nobody cared about money. Nobody had any money. It just didn't seem to really matter. I had some drive for something. I wouldn't even know what to call it back then, but I went to college in Wisconsin at Marquette, and then took a little bit of a detour professionally, although a fun one in a way, and was a Peace Corps volunteer in Central America, and then back to grad school and wound up going the corporate route for a few years. I thought that that's where you kind of make it big. So I worked for a large multinational international paper in the US and then back in Latin America. And that's where I sort of cut my teeth as an operator, running some various businesses across Latin America. And then I got the itch to be an entrepreneur. And that's
an itch that it's hard to you can't scratch it off, right? You just
right?
That's
for sure. And a lot of that was driven by a lifestyle desire. This was always there was always this risk or this expectation that if I did poorly, I was out. If I did well, I got moved, and you moved where the company wanted you to move. I wanted to move where I want to move. I wanted to build my own life. So I hoped and thought entrepreneurship would be that path and journey for me.
That's interesting that you brought that up, Mark, because I'm I wouldn't say an anti-corporate guy, but I've just like grown a kind of away from that world a little bit. Like I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a real estate agent, which is really not corporate at all, at least at the capacity that I do it. And I think about this all the time. Is that your reward in corporate a lot of times. So, by the way, sometimes you can make a bunch of money and that's great too, but you just said something that I don't think I've ever heard anyone say before, is that you get rewarded by moving to an area that they now need your expertise in, which is fascinating. It's like, well, I've actually I've grown this region, right? And I'm in Philadelphia, but well, guess what? Charleston is actually where we need you and you're up and you're gone. And I think that's uprooting, and maybe it sounds like the lack of control that you didn't have in that world drove you to the entrepreneurial life. That's
exactly right. Now, of course, you and I know that it's not that being an entrepreneur means you have full control of everything, right? And a lot of risk. But I have a lot of respect, and people make their choices. But I see now how corporations are really good at locking people in with golden handcuffs, And I remember, for example, when I was told my then wife about this desire I had and, wanted to quit my corporate job. And she was super supportive, but she said, well, but how are we going to cover health insurance? How are we going to cover who's going to pay for this or pay for that? And I said, you know what? I hear you. Those are all chump change in the scheme of things, right? Now that matters in the short term. But when you can realize, oh yeah, I can look back and see, oh yeah, I can see why they were helping me with this and would have covered move costs and other stuff, because I'll do that for employees all day long across our companies if they're, driven and engaged by, achieving what I want, not what they want.
You learn. It's funny that you learn. So I'm 34 and I just got engaged. I don't have kids yet. So I could see it. For me, being an entrepreneur was like, I'm not saying it. It's so much easier than being whatever the age is, 3 kids, you're established, and then your wife says, or husband, whatever, says, well, hold on, we got all of this to take care of. I can see why a $275,000 salary and a whatever it is, a healthcare and the car and all that stuff is like, you sure you want to leave this? For me, it was easy because it was just me, So
That's exactly
I think
right.
I think that's a factor there. But I want to get into your journey here. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much a capital, ground force capital, see that and ZICO Coconut Water, they seem like they're in kind of different fields,
Yeah, good
right?
point.
So like,
Good point.
let's talk about, you founded ZICO Coconut Water. And
Yeah.
I want to bring this up because it doesn't sound like what you were doing prior to was like led you to, were you working in the bottling or coconut water? Like, tell me about how you got to this sphere, if you will.
It's interesting, Corey, when sometimes you look back, you can make sense of this, right? And so looking back, it makes a lot of sense. But at the time, I could see why people thought this was a ridiculous idea. The businesses I ran were all suppliers to the beverage industry, right? So it's probably the equivalent of saying you're selling, wood to builders. Well, let me go into real estate, right?
You're adjacent, but not exactly. Yeah, I got
not
you.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I did have a tough learning curve. I knew nothing about beverage and distribution and kind of classic consumer marketing, but that did help because in particularly in coconut water at that phase, there were a lot of challenges on where do you get it? How do you source it? How do you package it? How do you process it? And I did have some background in knowledge of that was super helpful. And so, but at the same time, like I understand why a lot of people didn't invest in me. And I understand why my, now amicable ex-wife was skeptical at the time, like, what are you doing? And especially, you'll get this from Philly. She's a New Yorker. And she was thinking, oh my God, you're going to get eaten for lunch up there. Because we decided to move to New York and launch in New York. And I'm a guy from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's not Philly and Philly's not New York, right? So there's but you figure things out. And so I jumped into the deep end and, looking back, I can see that, and we'll get to this, how much I denied, avoided, glossed over all the fear and other emotions I had. But at the time, it was just like it was survival. Like once I got in, I gotta survive and get through this somehow.
They say like building a business is like filling a need. So what gave you the idea of ZICO? Like, how did that even come to be? And like, why did you feel like, this is actually an untapped market, if you will, that's something I can grow?
Yeah, great question. So one thing I did really well, I think, when I look back was I had the itch to be an entrepreneur. And I started just brainstorming ideas. But at some point, I started to decided, you know what? I need some criteria against which to measure these ideas, right? So I started to put together some criteria, some typical ones you might see: growing industry, good profit margins, et cetera. But I also included some really personal ones. Is this light me up? Does this align with my values? Can I see myself dedicating a decade or more of my life to this? What are my girls going to think about this someday? And when I added those criteria, what was interesting is the beverage industry is massive and growing. And the gap I saw was, at the time, I was an athlete growing up and I'd stopped drinking Gatorade forever ago. And so I realized, wait a second, there's a whole movement of natural foods, yet it hasn't really hit, especially back at the time, sports drinks or other replenishment beverage. And yet here's coconut water, which I'd known and loved living in Latin America, high in electrolytes, known for its replenishing properties, but no presence in the US, except for, ethnic markets at all. But then the personal side was, man, I love health and wellness. I love, food and beverage. I'm fascinated by that. I've got this passion for Latin America. And so the big idea became, wow, if we can just get enough, consumers, the right kind of consumers, to understand there's a natural alternative to Gatorade. And it's been around forever. It's known by 1 billion people across the tropical world. We just got to figure out how to get it in as pure and great tasting an offering as possible. We got a chance to become, build a big business and build a whole industry.
It's very cool because I was an athlete growing up too. Didn't get very far. Of the stature of 5'9" gentleman over here. So, but I realized that I played varsity sports, and then I realized at the next level, there's levels to the game, right? But I hear exactly what you're saying, because I don't drink Gatorade either. And I always looked at it as like, people, it's designed as a sports drink, but it's really like almost as bad as soda, in ways, because of the amount of sugar intake. Now, if you're an athlete, you can get away with drinking it because you're burning off all of this. But if you're sitting around drinking Gatorade, it's gonna affect you negatively, right?
For
So
sure. For sure.
I love that this came to be, and it's like, again, solving the problem. But I'm curious about the beginning stages of this, and what you did, how you grew a team, like how you sourced, like how did this, maybe talk to me about year 1, year 2, and getting this off the ground, because inevitably you sold it to Coca-Cola, which is pretty cool. And a lot of people would be like, I think I'm done, but we'll get into your story about you continuing on after that.
Sure. When I look back, I think that one thing I did really well, and I encourage, people to do this, is I didn't quit my day job right away. I was nights, weekends, vacations, research. And you can do that today, 10x the resources that, I had back then. But one of the things I researched every major beverage brand that had launched and scaled or failed in the prior 20 years. Back to Gatorade, Red Bull, Monster, Nantucket Nectars, Snapple, Vitamin Water. I researched all of them, everything I could find. How did they go to market? What did they learn? Where did they go? But I also even went beyond that and started to think about, okay, every major business I could think of started narrow to start. Even Facebook. People forget Facebook started as Harvard University's equivalent of the, is she pretty? Is he hot? Right? And then it expanded to the Ivy Leagues, and then expanded to the colleges, and it expanded. And it went fast. You can go fast, but everything starts as a niche in some ways, right? Amazon with books. And so that was really helpful for me for a mindset, because then and I'll get into the supply chain maybe in a moment, but when I decided to launch, I decided, okay, New York City, what better place to have every available type of consumer is in that city, right? So if I can't find a small tribe to love this product here, I'm not going to find it anywhere else. And so before we even officially launched, I spent a few weeks, hired some young people on the street just to sample, like get product out there, see how people engage with it, see what we learn. And that was invaluable, because what we learned is I thought, oh, this is going to be a slam dunk with most Latino and Asian consumers. And most of them at that time came back and said, no, coconut water comes in a can and it's 99 cents and it's super sweet. They didn't care that it had a ton of sugar and it was highly processed and kind of fake in many ways. And then I thought, okay, well, what other audiences? And I tested out, but I thought, okay, so basketball or soccer communities, other communities. All those did okay. But the one place where it really resonated was hot yoga studios, were big and getting bigger at the time. And those were, particularly in New York, 90 minutes, 108 degrees, 26 positions, I think. It's like, it's intense. It's a workout. You're dripping sweat. And so the idea of a post replenishment was what I kind of thought I was going after. People would call that the usage occasion. And it turned out that with this audience, they loved it, because you can imagine for you and I, but for a yogi, like Gatorade's the Antichrist, right? It's nothing to do with their lifestyle. And a lot of them, particularly even back at the time, travel to Latin America, they're eating in the local ethnic restaurants. Like, they're more likely to be familiar with coconut water, a little more adventurous. So believe it or not, we launched in our for the first couple of years, everything we did was built around these hot yoga studios. And then our strategy for the next couple of years even became follow the yogis. So I remember getting a call from a yoga studio in San Francisco saying, I don't know what ZICO is. All I know is that I've got customers that come in from New York every week, and they're telling me I have to have it. So what is it and how do I get it? I'm like, okay, that's what I want to hear, So what I encourage entrepreneurs early on, and now I'll get back to where we are at Ground Force. We invest at a much later stage, but I encourage entrepreneurs like focus on a limited. Who's your tribe, and how are they using what product or service? How are they embedding it in their lives? And the term we use in beverage is velocity, but the equivalent in any other industry would be engagement, right? Like you got people that are using it all the time. That is expandable. Trying to peanut butter across, consumers in the US doesn't work. So inch wide, mile deep is the phrase we use for that.
Hey, let me pause the episode real quick. Let me know if this sounds like you. You're making six figures, you're climbing the corporate ladder, investing in your 401k and your Roth IRA, and maybe even a brokerage account. But deep down, you're asking yourself, is this really it? Like, am I just going to do this thing for the next 30 years and hope to retire in my 60s? That was exactly us just a few years back. We were curious and excited about real estate, but overwhelmed and without a roadmap. If you fast forward to today, we've built a portfolio of over 80 cash flowing units and grown our net worth to over $2 million. We made it our mission to help busy professionals like you take that same leap and start building generational wealth for yourself and your family. That's exactly why we created the Wealth Juice Inner Circle, a private real estate investing community designed to help you get your first rental property under your belt in as little as 90 days. Inside, you'll get direct access to us, our full investing network, private off-market deals, and our exact playbook, and a community of investors who are closing deals every single week. That first property changed everything for us. We always talk about it. It was the true foundation for building generational wealth. And honestly, if we had access to something like this when we first started, we'd be 10 times further along by now. So if this sounds just like you, click the link in our show notes and schedule a call with me. Yes, me. I'll be taking the calls. We'll go over your goals, map out a plan, and get you ready to close your first deal. Let's get it. Well, I love that. You're saying that regardless, everything starts as a niche. I don't think people think that. They want to be everything to everyone. And I find that that's, that actually helps me a lot in my thought process, because I have a couple of, they're adjacent businesses. Like I'm an agent, but I teach people how to buy real estate. And I've realized that I teach them how to get off the ground, get your first or second rental property. And what that does is that the people that like me in a t-shirt and a hat will resonate with me. And that's my niche. Those people, maybe they look like me, or maybe they're in geographical same area as me, but they can be like, hey, there's this 34-year-old guy and his partner who is the same age. They have a certain vibe to them. Your vibe attracts your tribe, that type of thing. And I love that. And so I should focus on that as opposed to trying to be like, I can teach anyone anywhere to do this. And that's really helpful. So
I'll give you a specific example if I can. And I'll give you one outside of real estate and one in real estate. And I heard this story years ago, and I'll never forget it. There was a woman that left her corporate career, and she was in talent development, HR. And she wanted to start a recruiting firm. And she put up her shingles, started her business, and she's like, I got to get business anywhere, anyhow. And she struggled. And someone had advised her, cut your target market in half. And so she's based in Atlanta. Next thing you know, she said, okay, I'm only working east of the Mississippi. Her business doubled. Still small, but doubled. She said, look, I'm going to try that again. Then she went down to the South, doubled again. Then she went down to Georgia, doubled again. Went down to Atlanta, doubled again. Then she started to narrow by channel. After a few years, all she did was mid-career professionals in healthcare in Atlanta. And you know what? Multi-million-dollar business, because she was the only game in town. And I'll tell you in real estate where I saw this recently, I've bounced around LA quite a bit. I was in Redondo for a bunch of years. I was bouncing around, and I was in Venice Beach for a few years. There's a realtor there. I think it's Pardee, Pardee, something like that. I had never heard of them. I've been in LA forever. Never heard of them outside of Venice. But when you're in Venice, she's everywhere. You can't buy, sell, do any transaction that she's not around in some way. She owns it. And it's been a killer market for 20 years, right? And I know, I actually don't even know her personally. I know people that work for her, but apparently she's got a killer house outside, a bunch of other stuff. Like there are, I think most people think you got to go big to be uber successful. It's not true. You can be as narrow as you want. There's no reason that, you can if you want, but that focus and finish, I've seen it in every industry, every business I invest in. everything I do is like, I want to see focus, 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 focus.
It's amazing advice because, like, I see people online. There's a big online business community that's been developed, and I think some of them are BS, but some of them, like, there's a lot of them that are really, really useful. And some of them I see, like, I'm Jewish. So I'm just going to give this example. They're like, I help Jewish men in their 30s have back pain. I'm like, how many people could this possibly be? But you're just kind of you just proved that the more niche you get, you actually are speaking directly to your avatar, and the conversion rate.
The right niche, if it's validated, you've got to work through the economic model. But I've met, and it doesn't mean you don't scale elsewhere. But if you can solve for one audience, it's a challenge, but great marketers can say, okay, now we're going to apply this to elsewhere, right? So
proof of concept, if you will, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now the question is, we've done such a good job with Jewish guys and their lower backs. Now let us tell you why we're doing it with Jewish women, because they have a different challenge. And blah, 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 blah. We've done such a good job there. Now we're going to tell you how we do this.
And again, that was just so random, but I'm just like, I'm just thinking through this.
Same concept. Concept.
So, all right, I want to get into to ground force too. Yeah. Obviously, that's like one of the key points here. But before we do that, talk to me about what it was like to sell ZICO to Coca-Cola, and then you bought it back from Coca-Cola too. So I it's the only other situation that I even know. I don't study this like you do, but like thinking of Barstool, right, where they sold it. Prez sold it, and then he bought it back, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I know that there was some, like, how did that work for you? What was selling it like? What was buying it back like?
Yeah, well, selling it was great, right? It's fun. It was a journey itself. It was a 9-year build, and it was a tough negotiation and almost fell apart a number of times. But in the end, I think they decided that they really needed the brand, wanted the brand. And so that was my intention. Better or worse, that was my intention from the beginning. I wanted to sell to Coca-Cola. That was like before I even started, or as soon as I came up with a beverage concept, like that's the goal.
You started with the end in mind. That's very
I did. And so I drove towards that, achieved that, and then I walked away. I was out of a job. They put somebody else in to run it, and I was, quote unquote, free. So it was amazing. And I had, coming up from modest backgrounds, unless I was an idiot, I didn't ever have to work again. Right. But when I look back now, I realize I had a lot of fun. I bought plenty of toys, a beautiful beach house, a beach in California, traveled, around the world, did a lot of fun things, started becoming an active angel investor as well. But I also look back and realize, man, I, in many ways, found myself within a couple of years trapped again by, like, I was on in many ways, I loved it. It was a great journey that ZICO was, but I was in this perpetual someday. You had a guest on that was talking about that, right? This idea of, I'll take care of my mental health someday. Well, what I realized is I was going to take care of everything someday. My marriage, my mental health, my physical health, my financial discipline. It was like just someday, right? Someday came, and I did a little bit of that, and then back into the weeds. And what I realize is, oh my God, like, I am now as trapped as I ever was, because it's always like, now it's the next deal. It's the next million. It's the next sale. It's the next investment. And I realized, my God, how many entrepreneurs spend their time just like chasing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I began to do is take a little bit different approach, which we'll get into later with my book. But it was an incredible ride. And I'll just kind of take you forward. Then I became an active angel investor, decided to formalize that, and started what was first a small investment firm. And we've grown that to become a $500 million investment firm. We invest in better for you, predominantly food and beverage companies. The company we just closed is in Philly called Righteous Felon, a really killer beef snack company, jerky and other beef snacks. We also in Liquid Death and a number of other really cool consumer brands. Along the way, Coca-Cola past COVID made an announcement that they were selling down or shutting off 200 brands globally. Every strategic in the world pretty much said, let's focus on our core, right? So they shut down or changed their focus. And so ZICO was, doing okay with them. They weren't crushing it. And so corporate executives just said, you know what, let's get rid of that and everything else. And so we, through my investment firm, looked at it and talked about it and analyzed it like we would any other investment and said, well, there's an opportunity here. We think we can do this better than Coke. So we bought it back.
That's very cool. It comes full circle for you, which I think is awesome. I appreciate you sharing this because you're at a whole nother level, a level that I could potentially only dream of one day. But I really think about it. I'm just glad that you mentioned that you got to this. I called it a false summit, if you will. Like you made it to the pinnacle of where every entrepreneur wants to make it, of selling this company. And you said these are your words, that you said you were in the same cycle, which I find so fascinating to me, that you got to this point where you're like, I did it. I did everything I set out to do. I'm happy. Of course, life's great, right? But you're not fully satisfied. So it's like the enjoyment of the process and the journey. I mean, is that the key, really? What do you attribute that to?
For me, what I came to realize for me is, and I know I'm not alone in this, is this. I bought into this myth. Have a great idea, the entrepreneurship myth. Have a great idea. Work really, really hard. Do whatever it takes. Get up early, work late, whatever it takes. Scale the business, sell the business, or that doesn't have to be the case, but make a pile of money, and then you're free. Then you won. Yeah, it's post Super Bowl party forever, right? And I realized, oh man, that's beautiful, but it's a myth. And when I look at it, although I was chasing success and in some ways chasing money, I was really chasing the sense of freedom to be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want to. And I came to believe that too is a myth if it's in the future. The only time freedom exists, in fact, the only time success exists, in fact, the only time anything exists is in the present moment. And so I decided, you know what? I still have ambition. I still like to be in the game. I still want to build businesses. I still want to make money. I'm not waiting for freedom. I'm going to live it here and now. And what would that take? So that's when I've been on a 7-year journey to sort of build the tools and the skills and what I kind of call my operating system to say, I'm not compromising on that. And what I'm learning is I can get as good or better results with a lot more ease, fun, and presence than I ever did before. Because so much of ZICO, I was stressing about the past, complaining about myself. Why did I do that? Why shouldn't I should have done that. Comparing to others or living in the future that I was never actually there. And when you're there, you know it, like when you're doing a deal with somebody, you're having a meeting with somebody, you need to be present. That's when you get the best results, but that's also when you get the most joy.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, man, that you knew that. Now, I mean, you did achieve this level of freedom where it's like it is on your terms now, right? I mean, if you wanted to pivot and change, I'm sure you have the backing that can happen, right? You're not desperate. And I think that ultimately, even if it's hard to recognize, you did achieve that. And I think it's amazing. Which leads me to Ground Force Capital. So you kind of mentioned what you guys do, and I want to talk about your book as well. But inevitably, what happens in this world is that if you get good enough at something, people want to be taught from you how to do it, right? Yeah. And that's kind of, in a way, what Ground Force Capital does. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Just tell me about, you're guiding founders. You are essentially an angel investor, like investing in other companies after they get to a certain point to help them scale and exit. That's what you do?
Yeah, I would technically say, and this is something I didn't really understand until I started to get into this business. finance, like any other business, has its, sort of, different stages. So I was originally an angel investor. Then with this firm, investing my money into individual companies. Then we first started this firm. We were doing what you'd call venture investing. Now we're doing what we would call growth stage investing. So we only invest in companies that are minimum 20 million, typically 20 to 100 million in revenue. So they're already wildly successful by comparison to the vast majority of companies that start and grow. And although we've learned a thing or two, my partner also built and sold a company, and our team, we got advisors and team around us that have all been part of this journey. Every company is different. And even with the success we've had, we want to back winners. We want to back the best founders, the best operators, because it's tough. Even with all we know, even with all I've been through, I don't want to be in a position where it's like the success of the company is dependent on me. I want it to be an additional value add, right? And so, as an example, this company Red just fell in, incredible operator, great team, bootstrapped it, over a number of years, very well run company. But when he's looking for capital, he's looking for, not just somebody to write a check, but somebody that can be a partner with him and a sounding board and help bring some additional thought processes, right? That's what I love. And then I get to spend time not only in the business, but one-on-one with the founders and the other leaders of the team. And where we really differentiate ourselves is helping founders and leaders figure out how to find their success and how to help them get it and not compromise along the way, right? To live a life, have a family, take care of themselves, and still get the kind of results that they want.
Whether you're a new or experienced landlord, one of the biggest hiccups that people run into that prevents them from scaling their portfolio is lack of organization. And most people think that they're going to be fixing toilets at 2 a.m. because of that lack of organization. They're going to be getting calls from tenants, and tenants are going to destroy their house. One of the things that fixes that completely is easy landlord forms. When you're self-managing property, staying organized is one of the most important things that will allow you to scale. Easy Landlord Forms has tenant screening services, state-specific lease agreements, online rent payment systems, and over 500 landlord forms so that you keep everything in one hub, scale your rental portfolio with ease, and most importantly, make landlording and real estate investing as passive as it can possibly be. So go to easylandlordforms.com and you can use the code WealthJuice, which will give you 20% off any order. Well, Mark, there's zero people listening to this podcast that have a $20 million company. I would venture to say maybe there are some. I hope there are. And if you do run a $20 million plus company, reach out to us, reach out to Mark, because this is great. But I feel like a lot more people are at the beginning stages, which leads me to the barrier to entry to working with you is pretty high, but not to buying your book, which and you're speaking to everyone when you do this, right? So talk to me about the thought process of writing a book, what your book is about, and how it plays into just your journey in general.
Sure. Yeah. So it's called An Entrepreneur's Guide to Freedom. And where this came from was, like I mentioned, going through my own journey, kind of getting to, like you said, I love it, the summit, maybe realizing it's a false summit or not.
It is a summit. It's just maybe not what you thought, right? Yeah.
And then in many ways, I came back across the river. I'm doing the journey again. And I started to realize, oh man, there's got to be a different way. There's got to be different. So I started to rebuild myself and rebuild my own sort of operating system so I could, get the results I wanted, but not compromise to an extreme in the process, right? And have a life and enjoy the journey and be present along the way. And my term for that was freedom. I want to be free all the way along the way. And so as I'm doing that work myself, I'm getting great results. And I'm also more calm, more relaxed. I'm taking care of myself. I'm wicked disciplined on my calendar so that I sleep, I work out, I take time, I write, I rest. So when I show up, I am all on. And so I started to get feedback from people I work with, including my partner, like, what are you doing? Like, you seem so, you're calm, but yet productive. You can share and you're so honest and forward. Like, what are you doing? So I started to share more and more of what I was doing. And I realized that, wow, and meanwhile, either myself or really through my entire firm, we talk to 1,000 entrepreneurs a year. Like, I spend most of my time, even if we're not investing in them, I want to see what's going on. So I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. And what I realized is whether you're early in the journey or you have a $20 million business or a $100 million business, whether you've made $1 million, 10 million, 100 million, or $1 billion plus. I got a text from a billionaire a couple days ago, like yesterday. This guy is he's as trapped as an early stage entrepreneur. He's like, got to get more of this deal. I got to get this done, and I can't this, and he's not in good shape. And he's not taking, like that's success, So what I began to see is, my God, I know what it was like, and I remember what it's like, and I see so much suffering that I decided to share this and see if it resonates with anyone. So I learn by writing. I wrote this for myself initially, and I decided I'm going to share it and see what comes of it.
So what you're telling me, Mark, and this is good for somebody who's in like the early stages of entrepreneurship, it is possible to be present and build a business without neglecting your entire life the entire rest of your life in the process. Because what you just said to me about this billionaire, I wouldn't trade anything to be. It doesn't matter the money. I want to make a lot of money. We all do. I of course, I don't want to be like that. That's miserable. I don't care. I don't need to be a billionaire if I'm going to be that stressed. I'm telling you, I don't need it. Yeah. Right. So it's like you're saying it's possible even for people starting out that like you don't have to throw away your present moment and still build a big business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean, you don't have to work hard. That doesn't mean you can spend absolutely every hour of every moment that your significant other wants, your kids want, your friends want, right? But what I'm teaching and guiding people is the first thing to do is, like, I'll give you one little trick. It's what's the story you're telling yourself, right? So what I realized is I myself, and everybody goes through this, throughout the course of the day, we're telling ourselves these stories. One might be, I can't possibly be successful and work out the way I want, right? So what I encourage people is write that down. I can't be as successful as I want and work out the way I want to. The next question is, are you certain? Are you absolutely certain that's true? And just asking that question with curiosity, not criticism, creates a little bit of space for possibility. Now, on the flip side, one may say, there's no way that I'm going to like with family, let's say, I can't possibly like I won't compromise. I have to see my family, and therefore that means I can't be successful, right? Okay, I have to see my family. I have to. I'm not a good father if I don't show up to every game, right? Are you sure? Well, I'll give you a prime example. My youngest daughter was in high school, and she was in track, and she was pole vaulting, right? It's tough, right? She's learning to get up there. She has these meets, and they're forever. If you ever go to a track meet, it's like you're there for like 2.5 hours to see a 5-minute event.
My sister was a gymnast, so I think it's similar. Just like waiting for hours. So yeah.
My other daughter was a gymnast. That's a lot more active than this.
Yeah.
So I sat down with her and said, "Hey, Lexi, can I share something with you? I'm feeling a little bit conflicted about showing up for going to that event for 2.5 hours tomorrow. How do you feel about that? Do you want me to be there, or how do you feel?" And we had a real honest conversation. And she said, "Oh, you know what? Tomorrow's not really, I don't care. But next Saturday is kind of a big one. I'd love you to be at that." And I said, "Okay, great. You have my word. I'm going to be at that." Right now, literally the day before that, I had some friends I was talking to, like, what, you're not going to your daughter's event? What do you mean? Like, what kind of father are you? You know what I was doing the day before with her? I taught her to sew, right? Like, I'm making my choices. I'm making my choices with her. People are going to judge. People are going to think what they're going to think, right? I didn't go to every game. I didn't go to every play. But when I showed up, I showed up. And when I spent time with them, I spent time with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I have a kind of a sort of a mentor. I haven't talked to him in a while, but Scott O'Neil is his name. I brought him up on a couple of these podcasts. He's the CEO of Live Golf. I used to work for the 76ers, and he was the CEO of the 76ers when I worked there. And he wrote a book called Be Where Your Feet Are. And I brought this up on a number of podcasts because that is what you're saying, really, is like, on this podcast right now, I have a monitor up here, and right now it has some information about you. I have my phone over there. Really, it should be not on the table, but I'm present. We're present. You have your dollar per hour right now is, I mean, I can't even tell you how much, like, that if you're just go, like, but the fact that you're able to have this conversation with me and be present, I mean, that's pretty cool, right? Like, that's a really cool thing. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I think it's awesome. As we start to wind down the show, I just want to, I don't know if people have asked you about this, but I know it's in your bio. I'm curious. I'm reading here that you lost your home in the Palisades fire in 2020, this year.
Yeah.
I know that the only other person that I've heard this was JJ Redick, I think, lost his home, the coach of the Lakers. You don't have to share anything if you don't want to. I'm just curious about that, like, going through that process. Like, you're this like big time entrepreneur and you're on top of the world and you lose your home. It's got to be crazy, right? Yeah. I mean, like,
I'm happy to share, Corey, and it's one of the things one of the reasons I'm here. And I will comment on one thing just to close the loop on that. I don't even know how long it took us to schedule this, right? Been weeks or months. I don't even know, because what I know is I move things when I need to move things. I encourage people in the book. One of the things I have is an energy audit, to look at your day and see what's an energy up, energy down, and kill it if it's an energy down. At least test that out, right? So I can tell you what happened. I get a lot of requests for podcasts. Some are outreach, some come in, and then I sit down and look at them, and I'm reading and looking up, but I'm also doing an energy check. Is that an energy up or down? And when I saw you, I saw your background, I saw Philly, I saw what you guys do. I'm like, no, this is an energy up for me, right? Fit into my schedule in the right way, so that when I show up, my phone's over there, my computer's here, I'm here, right? And that same practice helped me tremendously after the fires, because yes, I lost my home and everything in it. It was a big, beautiful, mid-century modern house, view out to the Pacific Lake. This was going to be my forever home. And I think years ago, not too many years ago, I would have practiced what I got really good at and what most entrepreneurs are really good at. Lean your shoulder in, go harder, grind through, right? Get shit done, just move, right? Get a new place, find this, take care of this, insurance, this, Nothing wrong with that. But I decided to take a different approach. And so the first thing, I go through a process that I call the freedom key. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What do I want? Can I let it go? What am I thinking? I'm thinking this is the worst thing that's ever happened for me. Ever. It's terrible. It's terrible. Okay. Am I 100% certain? Can I know for certain this is the worst thing that ever happened to me? No, I can't. How might this be the best thing that ever happened to me? What are you talking about? I go through that process and things lighten a little bit. Then I actually feel something I didn't really do for years. I learned to avoid, deny, and bury emotions like most, particularly male entrepreneurs, do. I actually felt, and I felt sadness, anger, fear. I just felt it for the first time in my life. I cried, I screamed, I went through all the emotional journey. And you know what? Emotions are just energy moving through the body. They're energy in motion. When you learn to just let them flow, they're not so scary, right? And they actually have a little bit of data. They have some intelligence. And then I went through a process next. Okay, what do I really want? Oh, I can see that house represented acknowledgement for me. I've made it. It represents security, a place I can kind of hole up and be. Yep. And I like control as well. Yep. I want to be able to control the outcome. Ooh, can I let those go? Because you know what? In this life, you don't have control over as much as you thought, particularly fires. We can be our own source of acknowledgement. And the security is what I carry with me, not ground force, not the money in the bank, me. And going through that process got me to a place where I'm at peace. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to make any big decisions for a year. That year's coming up, and I've decided to. So I live in a place now that's definitely, it's a lot bigger than the shack I lived in Costa Rica, but I haven't lived in a place this small since I was in grad school. And you know what? I'm at peace. I'll probably have a big, beautiful house again someday. Is that the Palisades? Is it Malibu? Who knows? But you know what? Right now, I am here, right here and right now. And that I've never felt that real presence and freedom like I have now before in my life. And that's why I'm here, Corey, is to share that with others, because it's possible. And I've learned this from others, and I just want to play a role in helping to share.
Well, it's really cool, man. If you're not happy in a shack in Costa Rica, then you're probably not going to be happy in I don't know how big your home was, but probably a large home in California. And I think that goes, it's funny. I still live in the house that I house hacked, where I lived in one bedroom and rented out the other bedrooms. I'm now here with my fiance. I haven't upgraded my lifestyle to where it could be because I haven't felt the need to, and I'm more about the freedom. And I think that you've reminded me, as someone who's stages ahead of me, that's, maybe I'm doing some of the right things. So I really, really appreciate your time.
The right thing for you. Right now. You can the other thing I'd encourage is trust yourself. You'll make the decision when you need to make the decision. There's no point in stressing about it now. When you need to make a decision, trust that you'll make the right decision.
I also love what you said there, Mark, about I had a deal fall through before I jumped on this podcast with you this morning. Just a buyer client fell through. And you have now reminded me to think, and you didn't exactly say this, but my thought is how could this be a good thing, right? Kind of how could this, sucks. I spent all this time, energy, effort. How could it be a good thing? How could it work out in my favor? Yeah. That's a pretty cool way to look at it. I think
allow for the possibility. Just allow for the possibility. And the other thing I encourage is feel those feelings. Just feel them. Go scream, get angry, whatever. And even get dramatic, because then it starts to become fun. Play it all the way out. I'm never going to get another deal. God, my fiance is going to leave me and I'm going to wind up on this tree. You get so dramatic to a point where you laugh at it. And then that third step is, what do I really want? Acknowledgement, control, security. Yeah. You know what? I thought that deal, man, I was going to feel so good ending the year, right? Whatever those are, they're just stories we tell ourselves. We relax a little bit, come back to the present moment where you can make better decisions.
Well, I respect your time. I know you have something coming up at the top of the hour. I just want to say that this is one of my favorite conversations I've had in a long time. And it doesn't always have to be detail oriented on what you do at this specific moment of this deal. Just the holistic approach to living life is kind of part of the reason why we started this podcast, to have great conversations. So thank you so much, Mark. This has been awesome.
Welcome, Corey. I enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. If people want to learn more about you, your story, buy your book, I'm sure you can buy. Just say the name of your book again.
An Entrepreneur's Guide to Freedom. Cool. It's on Amazon. And then for me, it's if it's personal, LinkedIn, Instagram, or markrampolla.co. And then if it is happen to be a firm or that's over 20 million or so, or getting close, predominantly food, beverage, or consumer products, Ground Force Capital is the investment firm.
Awesome, Mark. I really appreciate your time. This was an incredible conversation, and thanks again.
You're welcome, Corey.
Before we wrap this show up, I want to leave you with this. If you're listening to the show, chances are you're doing pretty well in your career. You're making maybe six figures. You're putting money into your retirement accounts, maybe stacking some cash in a brokerage account, but you're still waiting for that next level. And here's the truth. Waiting just costs you time. Every month you're on the sidelines is another month you could have had a property paying you and another step closer to financial freedom that you didn't take. Ryan and I know this because we stayed on the sidelines too long. We talk about this sometimes. We had the money, but not the guidance. And once we finally got our first property, everything shifted. It was the catalyst that built our entire portfolio and ultimately gave us freedom. And that's exactly why we built the Wealth Juice Inner Circle, to cut out wasted time, just give you the exact blueprint and surround you with a network of people who are closing deals every single week. So if you're tired of waiting and you're ready to finally get your first deal, click the link in the show notes and schedule a call with me. Let's map out your strategy and get you moving before another year slips by.